It was a decision that was eagerly awaited by both Malaysians and the international community. Thousands gathered around the Kuala Lumpur High Court on January 9th to hear the fate of Malaysian opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim, who had been on trial for allegedly sodomizing his former aide Saiful Azlan. Dubbed Sodomy 2.0, this trial marked the second time that the former Deputy Prime Minister had been charged for sodomy since his first conviction in August 2000. Many had expected that history would repeat itself 12 years later. But the worst didn't happen this time, as the court found the opposition leader not guilty of the charge. The news of his acquittal immediately triggered scenes of wild jubilation among 5,000 supporters. It capped the surprising end to the politically charged sodomy trial. Not even the 3 explosions which occurred outside the courthouse could take away the raw excitement of the crowd.
I'm finally vindicated. It is a tough few years for us. Continuous smearing, scurrilous attacks on my character.
The unexpected verdict hinged on the judge's decision that the DNA evidence presented by the prosecution was unreliable. This decision was also founded on concerns that the evidence was tainted. The court ruling had surprised even Anwar himself, who just a day before had called on his family members to gather at his house for a last reunion.
Well, we had extensive discussions with the family, with Azizah and the children. 2 days during the New Year, cut off from everybody else. And I'm proud to say that Azizah and the family have done extremely well and very, very solid in their support and commitment to even to consider the worst case scenario. And in the Pakatan Rakyat, the opposition, we have had a series of meetings in consider all options in the event I have been, I'm just put back into prison and what interim measures need to be done. All these are in place, including a draft manifesto for the next general elections.
It did come as a bit of a surprise because over the last few days there had been a lot of talk that he would be jailed, and also the fact that over the last week or so he had been doing the rounds, going around Malaysia trying to whip up support for himself, which told me that he probably thought that Anwar himself probably thought that he was going to be jailed. So in that sense, it was a surprise.
I think that if Anwar was convicted, then it will be more damaging for the BN. There was no political gain to be made if Anwar was actually sentenced.
Throughout the trial, Anwar had argued that the charges against him were all part of a government conspiracy to assassinate him politically.
It is meant to try and disrupt the opposition. But I think they're making a big blunder here, because we can sense this upsurge of people getting just fed up. It's just, I told them, it's just not the Anwar case. It is about the justice system in this country.
But the ruling Barisan Nasional coalition has maintained that the government had no part in Anwar's prosecution and that it was a private matter between Anwar and his accuser, Saiful.
I think it's very important, very important to note and to remember that the complaint against Anwar, which led to this case, was brought by a private individual, a former employee of Anwar, not by the government. It wasn't a conspiracy, it wasn't set up by the government. It was a complaint made by a private individual on account of sexual assault, sexual harassment, with the relevant laws in Malaysia. As a result, he has a right to have his day in court.
Prime Minister Najib Razak regards Anwar's acquittal as a testimony to the independence of the country's judiciary. He says the court's decision also clears the government of long-standing accusations that it has used political influence to sway the courts to convict Anwar and remove him from political life. This view has been echoed by other UMNO members.
The court has decided, and that decision must be respected. He is found not guilty. We have to respect that. And Saiful, being the plaintiff, must be able to accept that as the judicial system has decided. And as far as Barisan Nasional is concerned, it's time to move on.
The unexpected verdict may prove that the judiciary is free of the executive's influence. But some analysts are also of the opinion that the court's decision reflects the view that the executive is not an all-powerful institution. Nevertheless, it is a step in the right direction.
Previously, there were allegations that the courts were subservient to the executive, that judges were pressured to make certain decisions, especially in politically sensitive cases. But I think today it's been demonstrated and proven once again that the courts and the judiciary in Malaysia are very much independent.
I do believe it's a very good step for the judiciary, but I think it's only a step, right? And what we've seen in Malaysia is we've often seen one step forward and a couple steps backward. So I think one has to look and wait and see before one makes a quick judgment that this is de facto an indication that the judiciary is improving.
I think acquitting Anwar is also a political decision, because as I had said, there's no gain for the BN to be made if Anwar had been convicted. And but by giving it acquittal, it may give some leeway, for the BN government, and especially for Najib, probably to tout around the idea of reformation on his part, and that his government had no part in what the judiciary had done.
Anwar's acquittal has concluded a long, exhaustive process which has distracted both the government and the opposition camps. Both sides now have the closure they need to focus on the upcoming elections, widely tipped to be held this year. This would be the ultimate trial for both Najib's ruling Barisan Nasional and Anwar's Pakatan Rakyat, as both lead the charge to win the people's mandate to govern.
I made very clear that the issue is change. Enough of corruption, enough of racist policies. Let us move. Malaysia must mature as a democratic, moderate country.
We are not going to run away from that responsibility or that challenge. We will face the general election as we did in the last 12 general elections.
It was back in September 1998 that former Malaysian Deputy Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim appeared in court with a black eye and bruises, pleading innocence to charges of sodomy and corruption. His arrest and the physical assault suffered by him while under police custody had sparked international outrage. It also precipitated a wave of street protests and plunged Malaysia into turmoil. After the protracted court trials, the man who was once groomed as the heir apparent to the former Premier Dr. Mahathir Mohamad was found guilty and sentenced to 9 years jail for sodomy and 6 years served concurrently for corruption. For a moment, Anwar had effectively been removed from the political scene and had become a mere symbol of the opposition struggle for political reform, or so it seemed. But as history soon revealed, the former firebrand student leader in the late 1960s could not be kept out of politics for too long. Anwar returned to the political stage soon after his release from prison in September 2004, after the 3-judge panel overturned his sodomy conviction by a vote of 2-1. He He celebrated his return by leading the opposition alliance to victory in 5 of the nation's 13 states against the ruling Barisan Nasional coalition and denying it 2/3 majority in parliament. This was the worst ever showing for the ruling coalition in half a century, and much of the credit goes to the man released from prison.
We managed to forge a partnership among the opposition parties, except for 1 or 2 minor constituencies. And then we forged a vastly, what is considered a common program, the economy. Enough of corruption, and make sure that the huge wealth, petrol, gas, the industrial base that we have, used or utilized to develop the country, to ensure that Malaysia becomes more competitive and not to lose out to our neighbors. And these were the issues that actually attacked the imagination of the voters and did give us the support. We expect to do much better and to control Putrajaya this time.
Anwar Ibrahim, in that election, played a very pivotal role. First, he provided alternative leadership for people to have hope in. Second, he actually brought the different opposition parties together by being an important bridge, especially between the Democratic Action Party and the Islamic Party, PAS. And his role and his personality, both was actually very critical in that bridge building.
He did. By virtue of his stature, by virtue of his charisma, he was someone who could get the DAP and PAS leaders to look beyond their differences, to sit down and focus on their similarities, focus on their shared aspirations.